And finally, how do we come all together? Well, Montiel overall shared an easier way for me of thinking of Lorchard's taxonomy. She broke it down into four different models. Model A is coordination, which involves two people, the SLMS and the teacher, presumably sharing space, time, students, etc. And it is the least amount of work. Now, that would be something like creating that LibGuide for a specific curriculum, because that is sharing a web page that will help them, or sharing space. They could be sharing their library for computers. And then Model B is cooperation slash partnerships, and that's where the teacher and SLMS work together toward a shared goal, but they don't necessarily plan and evaluate together. This one to me is the most difficult to understand, because I just don't understand why you would work toward a shared goal but not plan together. And Model C is integrated instruction, in which the SLMS and the teacher plan, teach, and evaluate as equals, teaching both the subject content and the library curriculum. And that would be like in the lesson that I described on the first slide, involving the information from, I believe it was Fry, who had the information about mentioning those clear roles of the teacher and the librarian. Um, and then Model D is an integrated curriculum, in which the SLMS is able to achieve integrated instruction with every teacher in the school. And for this, the principal is absolutely essential. And breaking it down into these four categories really made it kind of more understandable for me. Because if you have one of those teachers who is reluctant to work with you, you can start at a very base level with Model A, with the coordination, and then you can move up to Model B and work with them in Model B for a while, and then finally you can convince them to come to the library and really get a good lesson together with Model C. And after you've done that with many of the teachers in the school and had many successes, you can finally talk to the principal and get them on board with Model D and getting a full integrated curriculum with the school. And then Kimmel did some very interesting research in how to have meetings. Kimmel did a research project where she sat in on meetings at a new elementary school. These were second grade department meetings, for an entire school year, and made notes and observations on what was happening in these collaboration meetings. Um, and she ended up breaking it down into 5 different categories: orienting, which happened 6% of the time; coordinating, which happened 25% of the time; making connections, which happened 32% of the time; making sense, which happened 24% of the time; and drifting, which happened 17% of the time. So, orienting is setting agendas, making decisions, getting on topic, saying things like, okay, so um, what are we going to plan today? Or what lesson do we have coming up? What's coming up in the curriculum? Coordinating is aligning schedules so that you can share some element, whether it's time or students, etc. So that would be things like, how about on Thursday? Or can we do this on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the next 2 weeks? Making connections is where you're connecting the curriculum to past experience, resources, or even to other portions of the curriculum. So things like, oh, this is like when we learned about the dinosaurs, or this is this is similar to that science lesson. Making sense is understanding the curriculum or understanding the resources, and that's basically where you're having those light bulb moments. And then drifting is when it's not part of the agenda, you're going off topic. Things like, oh, what are you doing for Thanksgiving? And it really is the SLMS's job to ensure that these 5 events are occurring during the meetings, to make sure that they're making the most of the meetings and that these meetings are going on track. So This entire project brought up many follow-up questions, and for me, most of them came from Latham's article, where Latham did the research on the two departments of a university, the MLIS department and the education department. So, education literature and teaching materials mostly address teacher-teacher collaboration. How do we as librarians help teachers to realize that SLMSs are included in that collaboration? And I that question really, I wish that I could have that answered now, because part of the problem is that teachers don't recognize librarians as teachers. They recognize them as the keepers of the media center. And librarians really need to be seen as teachers as well. We're teachers of skills. So, how do we change their minds to see us as those teachers? And then my last question is, how do we help the school to see our space as a resource center and hub rather than an extra space for meetings and testing? And once again, that was something that in the education curriculum, this is how students were coming out of the education school seeing our space. And we want them to see that it is a place with wonderful things, and there's information literacy coming out of there, and there's digital literacy coming out of there. How do we get them to see that that's what the library is for? And those are my final two questions. And this is my Works Cited, and I hope that you enjoyed it.